Hey guys, Ali Bear here, welcome back to Verdant. Today's a little bit different. This is the beginning of a new content series. So here's the thing. There's a lot of things about League of Legends that aren't pretty obvious on the surface, that require a little bit of digging or some duo queuing, which, not everybody has that option. We want to start encouraging more new players. But not just new players, players who need that next step. So today we're going to start with a bit of a dictionary. The terminology you'll find in games and from players that you may not understand. It's important to point out that all of these things in these videos are 100% sourced by the community. I asked a lot of people at varying levels of skill and also sourced a lot of problems that you guys had from the wonderful place that is League of Legends Reddit. I know. Whilst this is still an ongoing project, we're still open to things that you might want to learn about, so please do comment below or drop us a line on Twitter. So, to get back into things, today we're going to go over various phrases ranging from attack damage, area of effect, brush types, and a lot more, so sit tight. Attack damage. Attack damage, or AD, is a physical damage stat that determines the amount of damage dealt by basic attacks. It also determines the damage of champions that have physical-based abilities, commonly used by marksmen, bruisers, and physical assassins. For example, Lucian, Poppy, and Trundle. Attack speed. Attack speed, or AS, is the frequency your character can do basic attacks. This is measured in attacks per second, and it can be built on so you can be super speedy. Ability power. Ability power, or AP, is magic damage mainly used by mages or supportive characters to increase their magic-based abilities. For example, Syndra, Nami, and Fiddlesticks. Ability haste. Ability haste, or AH, is a statistic that reduces the cooldown of your champion abilities. It's also known as cooldown reduction, or CDR. The formula for AH is as follows. Cooldown reduction equals ability haste divided by ability haste plus 100. I don't really get it either, but apparently that's math. Area of effect. This one's going to be a little bit of a long one, just because this is where we're going to have to start explaining different types of area effects and how they work in the game. So, AoEs are basically, as it says, it's an effect that takes place in an area opposed to a direct hit. It's usually to affect more than one unit. There are multiple different types of AoEs. For example, chain AoEs start by hitting one unit, but if another unit is in close enough distance, the attack will then bounce onto the next unit without having to recast. This chain length is usually specified within the attack's information, and, for example, you've got Jin's dancing grenades or Nami's ebb and flow. Conic AoEs. Conic AoEs are exactly as they sound. The effect is within a cone in front of you. It takes any units within that little cone. You've got Camille's tactical sweep, or you've got Syndra's scatter the weak as prime examples for that one. Ground AoEs. Ground AoEs come from below. You pick your area for the target, and usually a circular area will appear, and it will damage any units within that circle. You choose where the circle goes. The only difference in this one is unless you're playing Miss Fortune and her Make It Rain comes from above as opposed from below, but you can still see the circle on the floor. Anyway, I digress. You might recognise AoEs, ground AoEs, from Nasus's Spirit Fire or from Morgana's Tormented Shadow. The next type of AoE is linear, often known as skill shots. It's usually a shot fired in a straight line from the caster that usually hits anything within that line until it reaches its target. Lux's Final Spark and Sona's Crescendo are linear AoEs. The only one that differs is Vel'Koz's Disintegration Ray. That can still be controlled after activated, but it will still go in a straight line depending on which way Vel'Koz is facing. So you can usually spin in a circle. One more type of AoE is Point Blank. Unlike the ground AoE where you choose where to activate it, Point Blank is cast around the caster, affecting anything surrounding it. For example, Garen's Judgment, or Spin to Win, or Hecarim's Spirit of the Dread are both Point Blank AoEs. And the last type of AoE is Splash Area, where the AoE is cast around a unit, affecting everything in the area. However, it might not necessarily hit the unit. It's kind of like a circle around the unit. So like Fizz's Churn the Waters or Lee Sin's Dragon Rage are both splash effects. And whilst these are the main types of AoEs, some can actually be hybrids, such as Tristana's Rocket Jump, combining both ground and point blank AoEs. Backdooring. Backdooring is always a risky move. It's essentially the move of sneaking into the opponent's base to take objectives, usually without the enemy team noticing or with not enough time to be able to react properly. You'll need to be able to withstand a few hits, as the backdoor is usually pulled off towards the end of the game, most commonly with a teleport. Brush types. Brushes are bushes. I just want to make that clear. Brushes are bushes. So whenever I talk about brush, I'm talking about a bush. There are 5 different types of brushes on Summoner's Rift. Sorry, Howling Abyss. Lane brushes. This is where everyone hides. Quite often occupied by junglers for a gank or a ward to stop the above. Pixel brush. In the prime point of each river, these small brushes can be used for a big old ambush. Tri-brush. Like the lane brush, this is where lots of hiding happens. Make sure you ward the heck out of it. Secondary tri-brush. These are situated on the other side of the tower. It's a prime location for a tower dive, so be careful. And the J4 brush, named after Jarvan. I don't know why it's named after Jarvan, I didn't look that far into it. So like the tri-brush and the lane brush, it's a super important area to ward. You'll often find more than one champion there. Buff. A buff is when a champion, rune or an item gets made stronger after a patch to balance out the game. It could be that it was relatively weak and wasn't having much impact, but additionally you can also have shielding supports that can buff their teammates with abilities, like enchanter supports such as Lulu, Sona, Nami. Cooldown. Cooldown is basically when an ability, an item, or a summoner spell still has a timer on it before it can be used again. You press the button, the little number comes up, you wait for that number to hit 0 before you can press it again. Simple. Creep score. A creep score, or CS, is basically the amount of number of minions and monsters you've killed within the game. The key to getting gold and experience, CS is one of the most important parts of League of Legends. The higher number, the better. Crowd control. Crowd control, or CC, is exactly as it sounds. You get abilities that damage an entire crowd of enemies, usually in the form of an AoE. Utilise this to your advantage in a team fight by popping it at just the right time. Diving. This one is another really simple one. It's usually what happens under towers. Your enemy has like 5 HP, almost dead, and is trying to recall under the safety of their tower. Naturally, for every League player, you're going to want to take that remaining tiny bit of health. So you dive. You basically go in under that tower. You get the shots taken from the tower. You may possibly die. Is it greedy? Yes. Is it fun? Also yes. DPS. DPS stands for damage per second. It's pretty self-explanatory in it in being how much damage you do per second. Told you it was pretty self-explanatory. ELO. ELO is essentially a method of calculation as to whether you're good or bad at the game. It helps within the matchmaking algorithm. Typically a high ELO is looking around low platinum or above. Other than that, you're looking at generally a low ELO. However, if you think you're a high ELO and you're not platinum, go for it. All it does is help the game match you with people that are around a similar number within your rank to ensure the playing field is a little bit more balanced. Farm. Farm the souls of those you kill and spend the money in the shop. Typically, the only role you want to avoid farming in is support. Let your ADC eat all that up and be rewarded with a strong lane. Feeding. Feeding is basically giving the opponent team lots of kills. You're feeding their strength. However, it is quite common when you first start playing until you get comfortable. So if you're feeding, or if somebody tells you that you're feeding and you're new to the game, it doesn't matter. Everybody feeds at least once. Forfeit, or FF. If a game is lost, you're going to either try mega hard to win it back, or you're going to FF. It's usually styled as FF at 20. This is because back in the old days of League of Legends, you couldn't surrender pre-20 minutes. So if a game was truly lost before the 20-minute mark, FF at 20 would be the chat indicator from other teammates to say, when the forfeit is available, we should give them the win. Now, you can surrender at 15 minutes. However, the vote needs to be unanimous. Post 20 minutes is dictated at least 70% of the vote being yeses. However, if you're on Howling Abyss having a cheeky ARAM, the surrender times are for 8 for unanimous votes and 12 minutes for 70%, due to the game mode being quicker. FF votes can be activated by typing /FF or /surrender in chat. However, there is a cooldown period between if a vote fails and a new vote wants to be started, so bear that in mind. Freezing, or freezing the wave. So, freezing the wave is keeping it in a position that's beneficial to you. Like near your tower. Essentially, the enemy would have to put themselves in a bad position to farm, leaving themselves open to ganks. So you kind of want the wave to be in a position where you have control over the lane. That one might be a little bit more complicated. That one is more complicated. Usually you're looking at higher levels doing that one. Front to back. So most team compositions tend to have a front line, your tanks and your engagers, and a back line, damage dealers, supports, etc. So the idea is to play a team fight taking out the front line and leaving the back line until last. However, in the case of assassins or divers, etc., you want to play back to front, which is when all of the above is reversed. Ganking. Ganking is going to a lane to try and ambush the opponents. It's a common tactic that anyone in the Rift can do, however it's most commonly used by junglers. They say it stems from the phrases gang, kill. A gank is usually used to gain an advantage in a lane, usually within the early game. GG, go next. Good game, go next. Basically, this game is lost, let's just get to the next one. Ghosting. Ghosting is one that you might not come across, but it's always handy to know, especially if you're a streamer. It's usually the phrase commonly used in the situation where someone on the opposing team may be watching your stream to gain advantages within the game, such as ward positioning, champion placements, etc. So be careful out there if you are streaming. Inting. Inting is short for intentional feeding. Usually when you or someone else is throwing the game on a large scale by dying a lot. Don't be that guy. Jungle aggro. Aggro is basically aggression. It happens when you're in jungle and one of the delightful monsters decides to hone in on you or a specific target. Basically, you've made the jungle thingy angry and he's coming after you. That could be a better way of explaining it. Kiting, or orb walking, is a strategy involving using auto attacks essentially without the animation taking too long. Once the damage has been dealt, there are times when the animation will continue, which although may save you milliseconds, it could grant you the kill. Basically, you keep attacking whilst walking. This is something that will need a lot of practice though. L9. L9 is toxic? That was what I got from that. Macro. Macro is how well you can play the entire map. Examples: understanding wave states, jungle pathing, objective control, rotations, and resource optimization. Mold. A state of being in which one's frustration-induced stress is a direct contributor to one's bolding, aka moulding. Thanks for that one, Reddit. Mana. Mana, or MP, is a resource stat that's required to cast most abilities in the game. It's the little blue bar below the health bar. Knowing how to manage it is important, and knowing the mana cost of opponents can also create advantages. However, you want to keep an eye on your mana bar, because if you're going into a team fight with low mana, you could be stuck just using basic attacks, and it won't be a fun time for anybody. Cool. So I think that's enough for this video. Thank you to everybody for sticking around, and thank you to those who helped provide the definitions. Don't forget to do all the liking and subscribing and stuff, and we'll see you guys again soon.